Greetings, respected viewers. This video is bidding RIP to Sir Ken Dodd. A couple of days ago, Sir Ken Dodd was called to his reward. So who was Sir Ken? Well, he was a British comedian born in 1927. So he's passed away at the age of 90. And he grew up in an area of Liverpool called Knotty Ash, and he very frequently referenced Knotty Ash, which is where he came from, in his acts. He grew up in a working class family, and he left school at the age of 14. His family had a business delivering coal, and he went into work with that full time. He must have done national service, though in the potted biographies of him I've cast an eye over, it doesn't mention this. National service is what British men from about 1939 to about 1962 were doing. Most boys aged 18 to 20 doing 2 years in the military. What else about Sir Ken? So, as an adolescent, he'd started off entertaining children in an orphanage as a ventriloquist. He started being a comedian and went professional with that by the age of 30. Musical was still going on then. So musicals are a tradition which goes back to the 19th century, and it'll be a theatre, and there'll be variety. Usually there would be some comedy acts, maybe a juggler, acrobats. It's not a circus, it's not that well set up for acrobats. Maybe a song and dance routine, comedians, acts 5 or 10 minutes in a compare. But if it was an outstanding comedian, then he'd have quite a long set. So that was music hall. It was light entertainment. It was aimed at the masses. It was not classical music. It was nothing too challenging. Now, in the 20th century, that went into steep decline because of the cinema and then television. And it just about survives, even now. Anyway, so he really was the king of music hall, and not just in his native Liverpool. And although he was a Scouser, he didn't speak with a Liverpudlian accent when he's performing. It was almost standard British, his accent. I suppose it had to be comprehensible by the rest of the United Kingdom. And that's another point, is he was very much a UK performer. He seldom, if ever, performed outside the United Kingdom. Had no desire to go on holiday. He had very distinctive bucked teeth. Well, his trademark buck teeth, they weren't false ones he'd put in or anything like that. He was bet by his friends that he couldn't cycle a certain distance with his eyes closed. The wager cost him a lot because he fell off and he permanently damaged his teeth. But it made him instantly recognisable, and he'd always have his hair brushed into complete chaos. Well, that's a good metaphor for the rest of his life. So he died in the house he was born in, and that he did not insist on luxury. He seems to have been quite miserly with himself, actually. Famously, he was prosecuted by Her Majesty's Inland Revenue about 1990 for tax evasion. Lester Piggott, the jockey, had gone to prison for tax evasion about the same time. And Ken Dodd, he was represented by George Carman, QC. Carman being one of the most distinguished barristers in the land. And Carman had Ken Dodd's house filmed. And the place was a complete tip. And there was £300,000 in cash hidden there. £300,000 in 1990 values is about triple that value today. So despite being a very wealthy man, he did not live in opulence and did not have a Bentley or anything like that. So Carman's line of defense was this was sheer incompetence by Ken Dodd. He's utterly scatterbrained. He's completely eccentric. His onstage persona is little different from his true personality. And Carman, he got Ken Dodd off the hook with the immortal line, some accountants are comedians, but no comedian is an accountant. The basis that Sir Ken was a comic and he couldn't be expected to be keeping his accounts in order. Things were in confusion. It was an honest mistake. That was that. So Ken Dodd's career had been flagging in the late 80s, and this publicity shot him to fame again. So really he should have bid a very warm thank you to Inland Revenue, which gave him oodles of free publicity. Well, Ken Dodd performed to the last. As long as his health held up, he was entertaining people, and he was asked to explain his resounding success. He said, "I love what I do." And that's a good adage for anyone who achieves outstanding success in any field. And if you don't like what you're doing, you're unlikely to be much good at it. He performed at a few Royal Variety performances. That's a charity show in Royal Albert Hall every year. It's in the autumn, and it raises money for charities. And Her Majesty the Queen is there. Well, Sir Ken Dodd has many accolades. He was in the Guinness Book of World Records way back in the 60s. He told 1,500 jokes in 3.5 hours. That was over 7 jokes per minute. 3.5 hours. Well, the audience couldn't sit there all the time, so they were entertained in shifts, people coming in and coming out. So he performed very long shows. He had Diddy Men, which I think were very small women dressed up as men doing special dances. Diddy was his patois word for small. He talked about the jam butty mines in Notting Ash. Butty means a sandwich in Northern English slang, as though there were mines you could mine these sandwiches at. So this was the wonderfully weird world of Sir Ken Dodd. Now, he married once, but his first wife died way back in the 70s, and then he lived with his girlfriend for decades, and he married her just a few months ago. I suppose he knew it was terminally ill. So that's that. I'm not aware that he had any children. Unfortunately, part of the obsequies for any British celebrity these days, male one anyhow, is to be accused of unspeakable crime. So let's hope this doesn't happen to Sir Ken. I've never heard a whisper that he did anything untoward in that regard. So they don't like him. They don't make him like Sir Ken anymore. And, well, I hope he's entertaining them up in the great big music hall in the sky.